Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of the Blue Collar Racing Podcast. We got another returning guest on. He's been on a couple times. Damon.
Hey, man, how you been?
Pretty good, man. So, I brought you on this episode. Had some people ask, and I know you're a good one for it. Buying used parts, anything from used trucks to motors to turbos to anything used. I mean, a lot of these guys are, we're not going out and buying brand new trucks and playing around with them. A lot of times if we're getting a new truck, it's just a daily driver or it's a weekend truck or it's a tow rig. So, I mean, a lot of guys on a budget are going to be getting used stuff. There's a lot of pros and cons and a lot of stuff to watch out for. And I know you've been on the good side and probably the bad side of it too.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess we'll start out with the beginnings of it. If you're going out to buy a truck, to race it, to have fun with it, just anything, what are some of the things that you like to look for? You can get into brand specific, you can get kind of whatever, just kind of what do you like to look for when buying a truck in the diesel world?
Yeah, man, I'll keep it kind of just, trucks in general. I don't even care what brand. The two biggest things when you first roll up to see that truck, first, look underneath it, see if there's any obvious leaks, especially on the ground. Try to see if the bottom of the chassis is covered in oil or trans fluid or whatever. It's quick, it's simple to look at, and it gives you a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with. A big red flag when you first pull up is if the truck's already warm. The truck shouldn't be warm when you get there. Don't fall for that. I warmed it up for you nonsense. You want the truck cold. You want to find out what it runs like when it's cold and as it warms up. If it's already warm when you got there, man, maybe they're just a good guy, but more than likely they're trying to hide something about how the truck runs when it's cold. And then, from there, the truck itself, just look for some obvious things like, do the front tires have some real messed up wear on it? It might need some front end parts. It's not the end of the world, but it's good to know going into it. And, when you first drive it, does it have any awful clunks or bangs or any crazy rattles? I know old diesels are loud. I get it. But, you want to try to listen for any of them real odd noises, just to have a better idea of what you're potentially buying before you sign on to buy it, and definitely drive it. Man, I don't know how many people I've seen go look at a truck, they love the way it looks, they throw the money down on it. A week later, they're like, man, I can't believe all this stuff's wrong with it. Well, did you drive it first? Well, no. Why? You know what I mean? When you go buy a brand new car, one of the biggest first steps is a test drive. Same thing holds true on used vehicles, too. Just use your senses, touch, feel, smell. If it smells like something's on fire, something's probably burning. Look into that kind of stuff before you give away the money you worked hard to have. Don't be somebody else's scapegoat just because that's the truck you want.
Yeah, and then also a couple of side ones that I really look for that not a lot of people look for, especially up north. Salt on the roads. I always like to check for rust, check the frame, see if the frame has a fresh coat of paint on it. If it has a fresh coat of paint on it, it looks like it's done a couple days before you went and looked at it, they're probably trying to cover something up. Check for snowplow mounts. Normally there'll be some kind of scratches on the frame, around the bumper, somewhere where they could have had a snowplow hooked up to it. Not saying all plow trucks are terrible to buy, but just know it's something that it's seen a lot of salt. And then another one that I really like to pay attention to is if it has a full tank of diesel fuel. If it's all the way full, unless they are daily driving it, nobody has ever really posted a truck for sale, had somebody come look at, and feel They are trying to hide something, or they found out something is wrong with it, so they're trying to sell it quick. Most of the time, it's not going to have a full tank in it. That means they're using it. That means they didn't find something wrong at the repair shop last week that could be a major issue down the road, and they're like, oh, we need to get rid of it right now, and they post it for sale. You go look at it. It's just kind of a red flag to look into if it does have a full tank.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one.
And then, yeah, the tire wear, and, like, it could have messed up parts on it. It could have bald tires. Just know that going into it, when you go to pay for it and buy it, you're going to have expenses after that. Also, I'm a big fan of seeing maintenance history. If somebody has kept a good maintenance log on the truck, that means a lot because I can see they cared about the truck. Any other major things? Like, a lot of people know to check the blow by and stuff like that. Anything else that's really something that you make sure you look at?
I mean, the only other thing I'd say is, if you're trying to buy a truck you're going to drive every day, we're not talking to the guys that are buying a truck to immediately cut it up and make a race truck, right? Because they're on a totally different level. But if you're going to drive it every day, I mean, make sure you like it. I mean, don't just buy the truck because the internet tells you that's the truck to have. I mean, it's one thing if the truck is fast and it makes you giggle sometimes, but if you hate dealing with it every day, like you go buy an old second gen with crank windows and manual seats and stuff. I mean, sure, there's some of us that love that shit and it doesn't bother us. But, if you know that you really want to have a truck with power windows and you really want to have things like heated seats and, just stuff like that, if you can, try to get a truck with that stuff and try to make sure it works before you buy into it. Like if AC is important to you, be sure to check it so you know if it's going to have it right out the gate right away. I know that's all trivial stuff, and there's guys that'll be like, oh, but Damon, who cares? Yeah, I get that. But if you're buying the truck on Sunday and you got to drive it to work on Monday, it's going to be a real bummer if you're going to turn on the AC Monday afternoon and then you realize you don't have it. Versus when you bought it on Sunday, finding out that, hey, this thing doesn't have AC and it's not that nice inside, and I don't want to be in this thing for long drives. And it's fine to buy something to want to change it. You can make any truck anything you want. You can change seats. You can swap dashes around. Hell, you can put in heated seats and remote start if you want. But it's important to kind of have those ideas in your head when you're looking at it, not to just buy what somebody else says has got to be the truck.
Yeah. And also just simple research. Like, if you don't know the trucks super well, but like, hey, I want to get a Cummins. Okay, awesome. Say you're going to look at a O2 truck. Just do a simple, look up a YouTube video, look up Google, just do a simple, like, the common failures, or there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of information out there that when you go there to look at a truck, like, you can see, okay, it's an O2 truck. It has a upgraded fuel system on it. Okay, awesome, because they cared about the truck. They did the simple things to save the parts on the truck. Every truck has a pros and cons. You just kind of need to do your research and then see what people did. I mean, it's also, you got to also look at who you're buying it from. You get that older gentleman that's, 50, 60 years old, 70 years old, and he's babied the truck its whole life. Yeah, it's not going to have a bunch of aftermarket stuff on it because most of them are not going to go that route. But, the truck's been taken care of and maintained. Not saying every truck you get from 18, 20-year-old is ragged on, but there's also a good possibility that it has seen mud, it's been put to the floor, transmission could be on its way out. You just never know. I mean, you just gotta really look at the truck, the pros, the cons. Pay attention to everything.
Yeah, I would say that's a good one to try to get, a little bit of the history on the truck. Like, if you go look at it and you find out it's on its fifth owner in like 2 years, well, why? Why have so many people been selling it so fast? I mean, typically these trucks stay with one person for quite a length of time. I mean, they're not super cheap investments, and they're not something that, per se goes bad or wears out quickly. So, if you're looking at a truck, like, I'll use a 6-liter power stroke. You got a perfect example. It happened here at the shop. Guy bought the truck, telling me about it. It was an '05. It was on its third or fourth owner within the time span of a year. And that's a pretty big red flag right at the gate. Truck pulls in, and it's running poorly, but coolant level looks normal, but there's never any pressure on the cooling system. Well, that's weird. Go to drain the coolant out of the truck to see what's happening with it, and there's no coolant in the radiator whatsoever. We'll come to find out they siliconed the hoses on going into and out of the coolant tank so it would hold a full tank of coolant because the truck was burning off all the coolant in the cooling system. And I'm not saying everybody selling a truck is trying to jerk everybody around like that. That's not truthful. There's a lot of guys who are just selling the trucks. They're upgrading, or they don't need it, or, they've moved on. Well, so be it, whatever. But it's important to know a little bit about the trucks you're going to look at and know what kind of things to check for. And I mean, God, we'd be here for hours to go through every different diesel engine. But I mean, a little bit of research goes a long way to know something and know some things to look for on the specific truck you want to buy that you're going to look at.
Yeah. This is a big part of it, is research and just checking it out. So what about, like, used parts? I know I've bought used parts, I've sold used parts. What do you, your kind of pros and cons and stuff you look for, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah, man. I mean, Marketplace is awesome for that kind of stuff, right? And let's be honest, we all get on Marketplace and look up parts we probably don't need. We probably end up buying parts we don't need, maybe parts we need. And, I mean, with used parts, it's kind of hard because it's all over the place. I mean, sometimes used parts get a bad rap because guys will sell something that maybe wasn't bad on their truck or didn't have issues, but, it didn't survive on yours. And it, makes it look like they sold you junk. And, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. The problem with used parts is you kind of got to accept the possibility that it may not be perfect when you get it. I mean, turbos are a great one. I see people buy and sell used turbos all the time. And some guys, I mean, like I've sold turbos myself that the truck simply outgrew or I just decided not to use, or, part of our old compounds we had on trucks at different times, we sell off, the little turbos or whatever that we don't need. And I mean, it's tough. You can check the wheel, you can spin it, and it seems all good, and then it gets hit with oil pressure and it leaks. It may not have been a problem when it came off the truck, but how long has it been sitting around? Where was it sitting? Was it stored properly? Was it sealed up, or was it just sitting open in somebody's shed, just sitting there collecting dust and such, and then you decided to come buy it? So with used parts, you got to be careful. And I know it's tough because, like, especially with anything used for the drivetrain, albeit turbo injectors, trans, fuel pump, all that kind of stuff, it's pretty unlikely you're going to see it run before you buy it, right? So, I mean, if you can get it from somebody that you believe is reputable, that's a good start. But, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And if you seem like you're getting like a really, really good deal, you should probably be a little suspicious about it and try to do a little homework on, that part and maybe even that person. I know it sounds kind of rude, sounds like, out here stalking people or whatever, but no, it's not like that. I mean, it's just like buying the truck. You're turning over your hard-earned money. You want to try to make sure you're not just throwing it away because, let's be honest, if we're just going to throw it away, there's way dumber things we could do than buy parts.
Yeah, exactly. And then some people do the right thing, especially with more expensive parts. You can send them back to who you bought them from. You can get the injectors looked at by SNS or Extra G or Ducky or anybody that does them. You can get turbos sent back and checked over. You can get pumps sent back and checked over. You can get transmissions sent back and checked over. Stuff like that, to me, if they took the time to send it back and get a good check on it, they're in the same boat as you. They have dealt with, bad parts before or something. They don't want to do that to the next guy.
Yeah.
And to me, that means a lot when you can get paperwork back from the company that built it and says A, B, and C is all good to go. I definitely am a big fan of that. Now, not all parts, not everybody's going to do that. But the people that do that, you can trust them more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not, some people buy used transmissions. I have never been a big fan of buying a used transmission unless it has paperwork because there's so many things, you don't adjust your shift linkage correctly and you start having stuff not happy or so-and-so built the trans. I don't know who they are. If they don't have everything in there perfectly, you could wind up buying a built transmission it's really hard to see if a transmission is burned up without taking it all the way apart.
Yep.
Same way with a motor. It's really hard to tell if a motor is trashed without taking it all the way apart.
Yeah, and I mean, with used parts, it's always a gamble. Everybody knows that when you sign up for it. It's one of those things where if it works out, you save the money, and if it doesn't, you move yourself backwards. And it's kind of a risk you got to be willing to accept if you're going to buy used parts. But if you're balling on a budget, which, let's be honest, we all are at some point. Don't let anybody fool you. Everybody has to do it at some point in their life. It can be worth it. You get, a decent turbo for a decent price, and you buy, you use the extra money you didn't spend there to maybe buy the more important parts, like a good set of injectors, and you buy them new. Well, then it can be worth it. But I do agree with what you're saying. There's certain things that are kind of sketchy to buy used, like injectors without flow sheets and stuff, especially without them being redone, is kind of scary, mainly for common rails, just because if that goes bad, it can cost a lot more than a set of injectors. But like with a turbo, for example, unless you're real negligent, if it all goes wrong, probably just going to cost you the turbo. And it sucks if you buy a turbo and it fails. But you bought a used turbo, and if it doesn't, you're winning.
Yeah. And a lot of guys will, say they haven't sent the injectors to SNS. Yeah, you're getting them used, so they're already cheaper. You can spend a little bit of extra money and say, hey, can you ship these to SNS, have them flow tested, I'll pay for it. I just want to make sure everything's good. 9 times out of 10, if they're not hiding nothing, they'll box them up and ship them right there. They won't care. they'll know they can make a sale if everything comes back clean.
Yep.
If you're hiding something, you would not want to ship it out and have a clean bill of health. It kind of proves that you're hiding something. But sometimes spending, you might be getting a set of injectors for $1,000 less than a set of new ones. Spending that extra $200 just to send them off, you're still $800 ahead. It's better than being $2,000 in hole.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's probably my biggest thing. And just with turbos and everything, pumps especially, I kind of look to see, like, most of the time, if it's a pump, they normally have a video of it running or something. And then also just find out why they're selling it. I mean, if they have a reason that doesn't really make a lot of sense, then something's not quite right in this situation.
Yeah.
But if they're like, oh, I'm going bigger, I outgrew this one. Okay, that makes sense. And you see they have plans to go bigger, then, and one thing that's always with used parts for me, if it's super, super clean, like if you have a turbo and every ounce of that turbo doesn't have any kind of dust, dirt, grime, oil on it, that means it could have been leaking at some point, and they went through and cleaned it where you can't see any of that.
Right.
Same way with a pump, same way with anything. Like, yeah, I know I keep my trucks clean, you keep your trucks clean, but face it, when you get to pull a part off, it's going to have some kind of dust, dirt, grime on it. And realistically, when you go to sell it, you're not going to sit there and brush every bit of dust and dirt off of it. You're just going to post it for sale and kind of leave it up to the next guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just a big part. Wheels and tires, a lot of people buy them used. I've bought a bunch of used wheels and tires. There's really not a lot of cons besides just checking your wheels for cracks. Give them a good look over and check for if they did not tighten their lug nuts all the way and the holes are ovaled where your lug nuts go. I mean, that's a big thing that gets passed by on people and nobody ever notices.
Yeah, that's definitely an important one because I've seen a lot of times where people don't see that and then they go to put them on and they have all these issues, and it all could have been prevented just by looking at that before you signed on to buy them.
Or just simple cracks, or look at the wheels and tires, and then you can tell a lot of, like, looking at the truck, seeing why they're selling them. It all kind of goes back to the same thing. Just communicating with the person and figuring out why they're selling them, what their plans are. And you can get a lot of info by just talking with the person.
Yeah, I'd say another big one of the wheels, if they only have 3 of them and they're selling it as 3, make sure you can still buy the 4th wheel. I've seen a lot of guys sell wheels that are discontinued as a set of 3, and you think, you're like, oh, I'll just buy a 4th one, no big deal. You go and buy these wheels, and then you find out they don't make that wheel anymore. Or they don't make that size or that finish or whatever. And it can be a problem for you. Now you got 3 wheels that don't match, which, to be honest, most people don't want in the first place anyways. So now you're stuck with, what do you do with them? Do you try to sell them again? Well, who's going to buy them? There's not that many people that want them. And so definitely something to keep in mind, can you still get a matching wheel? Or, if you're a guy that likes to have a matching spare and you're like, oh, if I buy a set of 4, I only got to buy one new one. Just make sure you still can before you go buy them, or accept the fact that one's not going to match, because you don't want that to come up as a surprise later.
Yeah. And one more thing I've noticed, and I know a guy that had the trouble with it. I mean, there's nothing against it because I've personally done it, is any kind of your custom painted or repainted wheels or re-powder coated or however they're done, because I had a color match set on my 4th gen. You got to watch those because, if it kind of looks like it has a cheap paint job on it, it could be a crack in there somewhere, and they just wanted to fill the crack and sell the wheels.
Yeah.
I know a guy that bought a set that were, I think they were white on a F350, and he had the wheels maybe 3 days, 4 days, and this ginormous crack came all the way across the wheel. And, in 3-4 days, realistically, yeah, it could have happened, but 3-4 days after buying them from somebody else, when they have a fresh paint job on them, that crack was probably there when he bought them.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, you could never pinpoint it and say that it was there, but realistically, it was there when he bought them. It had a fresh coat of paint on it. The paint covered the crack. What can you do at that point? You can't prove it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately kind of comes back to that thing of it's just kind of your problem now because you bought them, you know what I mean? And that's the only downside with used. And I mean, like I said, I'm going to probably say it too many times during this podcast, but I don't want to make it sound like everybody's out to get you, but you got to cover your back because, I mean, some people, they're out to try to make their problem your problem.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And, I would never do that to somebody. I know you wouldn't, and there's a lot of guys out there that would never sell bad parts to somebody. Like, if I know I have a bad part, but I know it's still worth something, like, I'll post stuff for sale and be like, hey, it's a core, or it's this, or this is what's wrong with it. Make an offer. Like, you can still get it, but you're going to know, and even when you message me about it, I'm going to reassure, like, that it's a core, or, hey, this is wrong with it. Like, just so you know a second time that it's not just like it's a good deal on such and such.
Yeah.
It has problems. If you want it for whatever you might want it for, cool, I'll sell it to you. But just know it's not a perfect condition.
And I mean, that brings up another good point, though. If the seller's willing to tell you what's wrong with it, he's probably not trying to screw you. If he's willing to tell you, like we'll use wheels again. If he's selling you some billet wheels and he straight up tells you, like, hey, man, I think the one's bent. It's never really balanced out right. They don't ride perfect. He's probably not hiding anything from you. But the dude who tells you that his, 10-year-old Forces, absolutely perfect. I've never had a problem. They've balanced out perfect literally every single time. They're always so beautiful. They're polished 24/7. If they're a bit over the top with how perfect the part is, they're probably lying to you. They're probably trying to get you in the facade that it's the greatest thing ever and you're getting a screaming deal, when in reality, they're trying to get you to cover for their mess up. Or if somebody tells you they just bought this used part and they're already selling it again, but they tell you how perfect it is, I'm not saying every time, but it's probably not as perfect as they're making it out to be. It probably has issues they weren't equipped to deal with, and they're hoping to pass along their bad issue onto you.
Yeah. And then 2 side notes I got with that is, especially with wheels, when you're looking them over, check for wheel weights. If they got a ton of wheel weights for balancing them out on one side, there could be a problem there. Could be, I mean, yes, you got to look at the brand of the tire. Some tires are better than others. But if it's a decent tire and you got a ton of wheel weights on one side and one area, there could be a problem with the wheel. There could be a problem with the tire. Just ask the person about that and be like, hey, why is there so many weights right here? What's going on with this one tire?
Yeah, I mean, is it possible that that one tire has issues? Yeah, absolutely. But is it kind of odd that 4 matching tires, 4 matching wheels, and one just has a boatload of weights? It's a little suspicious.
Yeah. And then somebody that's buying if you're doing it a lot, getting wheels and tires, not everybody's going to go out and do it. I'm lucky enough I happen to own a set of spacers. I know I went with a buddy of mine. We drove like 5 hours to go get a set of forces. He was excited. We get there. I was like, man, something just don't look right about these. I don't think these will go in your truck. We bought them. We came home. They were advertised as the wrong lug pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not everybody is super up to date with the trucks. Not everybody knows their lug pattern. I understand that. Not everybody's into it like you and me are. But just a simple thing like, I have a set of spacers that I've had forever. I forgot why I even have them. But if I go buy a set of wheels and tires that I know are not factory wheels and tires, I take the spacer with me and I just slide it in there to make sure the bolt pattern's right. And you can get, I'm pretty sure you can get stuff off of like Amazon and eBay that isn't that expensive, probably like $20, $40, that is a lug pattern checker. All you gotta do is get one of those, put a couple studs in it, and slide it up on the wheel. You might have $30 wrapped up in it. Slide it up on the wheel and see if the lug pattern is right. That $30 might save you a lot of headache and trying to sell a set of wheels that you bought that were wrong. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to things being listed wrong, it is amazing how many people don't understand wheel sizing. If you're looking for a specific size, like I have 12 wides are the worst ones. I don't know how many dudes I've seen selling 9-inch wide wheels, 10-inch wide wheels, and they're calling them 20 by 12s. They're calling them 22 by 12s because the tire on them is a 33 or 35, 1250 or whatever. If you're looking at it, or just take a tape measure, either way, and you're like, man, that doesn't look right, just check. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people don't understand wheel sizing at all and just think because the tire's a 1250, that's a 12-inch wide wheel. It has to be. Well, no. I mean, or, people love them cheap Chinese tires, right? And people love to not admit the fact that they don't run so true to sizing. So they'll put, 33 1450s or whatever on their wheel, and they're like, it's a 14 wide wheel. Well, no, it's 20 by 12. You got all custom offsets. And then he put 1450s on it and decided that makes your wheel a 14. And it's not always that somebody's doing it to be malicious. They just literally might not know. And wheels are something that a lot of people that aren't really that into the industry, they'll put on it. I mean, people like putting wheels on their trucks, to make their truck different, to give it the look they want or the design they want or even the color they want. So it's just something to kind of, if you can't look at it, know what size it is, which, I mean, a lot of people can't, that's fine. Just take a tape measure with you. I mean, it ain't got to be a fancy tape measure, just any old tape measure. And you can just measure the width, and then you can know for sure what you're buying without just guessing or just taking somebody's word at face value.
Yeah, and a small side note on taking a tape measure and measuring it. So a 12 wide wheel is really lip to lip is going to measure 13.
Yep.
A 14 wide wheel is going to measure 15. A 10 wide wheel is going to measure 11. So I've seen it posted up before on Marketplace. Somebody that didn't know, they're like, I got a 20 by 13 wheel. Well, you and me now, nobody makes a 20 by 13.
Yeah, it's 20 by 12.
It's a 20 by 12 wheel, but when you actually measure lip to lip, it is going to come out to be 13. So if you don't know that and you're trying to measure to make sure you're getting the right thing, just know it's going to run an inch more. And also, I see it happen a lot. Somebody, they see a third gen on 22 by 12s with 33s. And they are driving a second gen. So they go out and they're like, oh, well, so-and-so has 22 by 12s and 33s. They go out and buy them, and then they realize they are rubbing like crazy.
Yeah.
Second gen, a little bit smaller wheel well in the front. And I mean, what can fit on a third gen, I mean, fourth gens can fit bigger than what can fit on a third gen. All the different gens, all the different trucks, Ford, Dodge, and Chevy, they can all fit differently. Simple Google search, YouTube, Facebook. See what your truck can fit before you go buy it. Because what good is it? Like, some people don't mind the rub. I've had setups where they rub. You've had setups where they rub. Yeah. Rubbing is not terrible. There's some, like, you're not going to go get a stock truck, no leveling kit, Dodge, third gen, and you're not going to be able to put 35s on it without a lot of rub. It's going to rub like crazy. You're not going to be able to put 37s on it. It's going to rub. Especially with stock wheels, you don't even have to worry about rubbing the fender. You have to worry about rubbing the control arms on the inside. Just doing a simple search of before you go look at size and just figure out what size will actually work for your vehicle and not just buying the first, oh, these look cool, let me buy those.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen so many times. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've been a part of that. I bought a set of wheels. I was like, man, these look great. And, they rubbed. I did not have full lock. I had like maybe 80 or 90% lock. They rubbed like crazy. I owned those wheels maybe a month. I was selling them because I couldn't stand all the rubbing. I mean, everybody's been a victim to it. And, honestly, most of us, we're going to try to fit the biggest, widest tire we can in the wheel well for some reason.
Oh, man, it looks cool.
Yeah. So you're going to try to fit the biggest, baddest, whatever you can put in there. But I know custom offsets gets a lot of hate and a lot of good, but their website where you can punch in your truck and look at the stuff people have done and the wheel setups that they have on their trucks, you can get a lot of good information from it.
Yeah, and I mean, just even seeing what that setup looks like on your truck. I mean, I see all three brands of trucks pretty regularly, and it's crazy how differently a wheel looks and fits from one brand to another. Say you got a 6.7 Power Stroke, right? And you're looking at a set of wheels that you like, and you're looking at pictures of them on Duramaxes. And you're like, man, a 12 wide, 22 by 12 looks really good on that. That's what I want. Well, take a little bit of time and, try to find it on your truck or something similar. Do you have an idea how far they're going to stick out? How they're actually going to look on your body style truck. The idea that just because it looks good on Joe's truck means it's going to look great on Bob's truck isn't really the truth. I mean, a lot of it comes down to personal taste too. Let's be honest. There's wheels that, to some people they look amazing on everything, and to other people they look terrible on everything. But at least if you know what you're in for, you should know kind of beforehand whether you're going to like them or not.
Yeah. And I know this is kind of a loaded question and answers thing, but pay attention to offset.
Yep.
I have a tendency, I ran a bunch of different wheels, and I've always floated with these weird offset wheels where most of the time your 12 wides are like a negative 44, and then I end up getting wheels that are like, I think mine are like a negative 51, or it's a weird number. And offset has a big thing to do with how it's going to fit. So if you're looking at a wheel that has a crazy offset or whatever it might be, even if you can't find that exact same wheel on the truck, see if you can find the exact same offset with the tire size on the truck to see if it'll work.
Yeah, a big thing with offset is I don't think most people understand it. The basic way to think about it is if you imagine a wheel from the side and you think about where the bolt flange goes onto your hub. As that flange moves back the wheel towards the inside of the truck, that's negative offset. As the bolt flange moves towards the outside of the wheel, or the outside of the truck, that's going to be positive offset. So, the further negative you are, the more it pushes the wheel out from under the truck, and the more positive you are, the more it sucks the wheel under the truck towards the frame. And that becomes really important because guys get so hung up on just offset and not counting in the width of the wheel. Like a negative 44 offset on a 12 wide, most people know how that looks. But if you got, if you're looking at 10 wides and there's something weird, which I've never seen one, but let's just pretend there's a negative 44 offset on a 10 wide, that's going to be a whole different look and a whole different setup than negative 44 on a 12 wide or bigger for that matter.
Yeah, I know on 10 wides, you can get them in, I think it's 18, 24, and like 30. I believe those are the numbers. But those are from the 18 to the 30 or 28 or whatever it might be. That's a big difference on how far that wheel is going to stick out.
Yeah.
And that also, fitment-wise, and then one of the biggest things I've noticed, like when you're looking at somebody with a truck, you're looking at pictures of it, it might be your buddy down the road, whatever it might be. You see him have a 12 wide on the truck. I'm just going to say a third gen with 22 by 12s and 35s. Pretty common. He has a set of fender flares on the truck. Then you're like, man, I love the way that looks. Your truck does not have fender flares on it. You do the same thing, and then you're like, man, this tire sticks out way too far. Realistically, it doesn't, but you didn't factor in the fact of when you look down the side of the truck, you see the fender flare.
Yep.
So you might not want it to stick out that far, so you might want to go with a 10 wide. Or it might be the opposite. You see a guy 10 wides, small. I mean, they make so many different size fender flares these days that you just kind of got to look at it and see how it looks, and then you can judge what you want off of that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, start sounding repetitive a little bit, but it all comes back down to just doing a little bit of research before you spend your money. And I mean, if you have a professional to call them, ask questions. I mean, hell, you can reach out to me if you want to know. I'm going to be more than happy to help people understand what they're looking at before they spend their money. I mean, everything from turbo sizing to wheel sizing, it can all play a huge role in what you're building, how it performs, how it handles, and if it's even going to accomplish what you want in the end anyways.
Yeah, turbo size is a big one. I know we kind of jumping around here now, but
oh yeah,
it's a big one. You might have a 472 turbo that Joe was running on his truck and he loved it and he wanted to go up bigger, and then you're out here with stock injectors and you're like, oh man, I want to do the same thing. It's not gonna be a fun drive. You're gonna hate it. It's gonna be laggy. It's gonna be smoky, and you really gotta do research on your turbo sizing too. You just don't buy it because it's a big shiny spinny thing that you think and Joe down the street has one. Yeah, I need one now. Like, yeah, it might work for him, but his tuning, his setup, his everything on his truck might be different. I mean, just the difference from a P-pump truck to a common rail, your turbo sizing is way different.
Yeah, I mean, I apologize, everybody, for us jumping around, but, I mean, with turbos, there's also, like, the people get so hung up on talking about compressor size, right? Like, everybody loves to talk about how big their compressor is, but you got to have a moment and really think about it. I'll use a 64, for example, right? On let's say a 5.9 common rail. You can get 64 millimeter drop-ins, which are going to have your much smaller factory size exhaust housing and a much tighter wheel, tighter AR. They're going to spool up fast, etc. You can have a 364, an S300 base turbo, which is still going to have your smaller turbine, be a T3 if you want. And then, you jump up to like a 464. You're like, well, it's only a 64. Well, yeah, but you jump clear up, now it's a T4 housing. Now it's an 83 turbine. It's going to be a little harder to light than the much smaller 64s. And then where guys really get in trouble playing with S400s especially is the T4 versus T6 topic. Guys will have, well, hell, S464s come with a T6 on them now when you buy them straight from Borg Warner. Well, that's going to be harder to light than, a T4 of the exact same turbo, et cetera. I was trying not to jump down a rabbit hole too far there, but there's a lot of variables to play into that matter a lot more than just that first number.
Yeah, exactly. Because back when I had my 05, I think, what did you have on your silver truck? Wasn't it a 64 millimeter?
On the dually?
Yeah.
Technically it was a 63. It was a fleece cheetah.
Yeah, you had 63, and I had the 64 on mine, and your truck would light it up and go. My truck would be laggy and then go. And you end up getting that turbo and setup from me, and you said it was a world of difference going from the Cheetah 63 millimeter going to that 64. I mean, you only went up a millimeter, and it's totally different driving it.
Yeah, I mean, that all comes back down to, so like on that truck, it had, a stock style T3 manifold with a Cheetah, which everybody knows, the drop-in turbo, and then putting the S400 on it, it changes everything. The truck's going to want to be in the RPMs more. It's going to have a little bit harder time getting it light from sitting still. But it all factors into what you want to do with the truck too. Like the guy using his truck for work every day, it's towing trailers every day. He might not want to step clear up to an S400 with stock fueling and no tuning. He's probably not going to enjoy it. He's going to be more in the crowd of the drop-ins, or maybe a small S300 if you like that. Whereas the guy who he knows he's putting 100% overs in it, he knows he's putting a 12 mil in it, and he knows he's fixing to make that thing get it. He might want to step straight up to the S400 and skip the steps in between. And again, like I said, that comes down to, research, kind of getting an idea of what you're doing, or talk to somebody who does, man. I mean, there's so many of us you can reach out to that are willing to help. You just have to ask before you just, I don't want to say waste money, but, spend the money twice.
Yeah.
But I'll jump off of that rabbit hole before we go too much further down.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on for a long time about that. So the last thing I got is trailers. A lot of guys for work, a lot of guys for doing what we do with the race truck stuff. A lot of us are not going out and buying new trailers. We're getting used trailers and stuff. What's stuff that you really look for when buying a used trailer, that type deal and everything?
Yeah, I mean, that one's honestly a lot easier than the trucks. I mean, with trailers, for one, try to get a trailer you're comfortable with. I mean, everybody doesn't need a 40-foot dual tandem gooseneck with a 15,000-pound winch and triple ramps and da-da-da. It's not, if it's not something you need or you're not comfortable with it, don't buy it. Pick a trailer that suits your needs. And when you find one that suits your needs, check the basic stuff. Check the tires. See if they know when the wheel bearings are greased last. Make sure the brakes work. Make sure the frame is in pretty good shape. It's not all rotted out. And, little things like look at the deck, look at the wiring. If when you look at the wiring, there's 7 butt connectors per foot, that's not a real good sign that the wiring harness or the trailer is in any kind of good shape. Or if you look at the top of the trailer and, there's a bunch of holes in the deck, or, it's beat to death and you don't really want to spend a bunch of money repairing it, maybe look for another trailer. And the other thing is with trailers, don't buy into you have to buy the most expensive brands to have a good trailer. I know there's guys that have the money to buy these $30,000, $40,000 goosenecks, and that's great. I hope they love them. But let's be honest, most guys that are dragging around their pulling truck or their race truck or their weekend toy, they don't need to spend the cost of the truck on the trailer. You don't have to have the biggest, baddest trailer when in reality you're just towing it. It's just a trailer. You get what you want, you get what you need, and if you want to get something better later, have at it. I mean, the upside is trailers don't lose a lot of value unless you buy them brand new. Then I guess there's an argument to be made there. And the other thing is, if your truck doesn't have like a ball in the bed and you're on a budget, don't worry about it. Buy a bumper pull. I see so many guys in our industry that act like bumper pulls are like some kind of antichrist. I mean, it's just a trailer. As long as it's safe and you take care of it, it can handle the weight you're putting on it. The truck you're pulling it with can handle the weight you're pulling. Then you're good. I mean, you don't have to have these crazy expensive trailer setups just to participate. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I've towed my race truck on bumper pulls. I've towed my race truck on goosenecks. I've kind of used them all, and you don't have to get anything special. Like you said, just watch your ratings, and you don't need a super huge trailer to just put a truck on it. Some guys go out there and they want 40 footers and stuff. I mean, if that's what they want, go for it. But you don't have to have that to do what we do. And also with a trailer, you can get a trailer and it could need some work, and you can add on to a trailer so easily. Like if it doesn't have a winch on it, you can add a winch. If it doesn't have a good deck on it, you can repair the deck and redo the deck, and you can add toolboxes. You can add pretty much anything you want to them. I mean, I know a guy that bought an older trailer, and he's put the electric jacks on it. He's put a winch on it. He's put all the stuff on it. His trailer is really nice. And it was just your basic, like, 30-foot gooseneck, nothing fancy, basic trailer. And he just added to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're shopping for a trailer on a budget, which let's be real, most of us are. Say you got a $15,000 budget, and you need to buy a $15,000 trailer that might be nicer, or a $10,000 trailer that's in good shape, but you have the rest of the budget. I mean, you can make your race setup better by spending less on your trailer. Like instead of blowing your whole budget on just a trailer, you can get some tents and some chairs for the track to get the hell out of the sun. You can put more money into the race truck. You could modify the trailer like you were talking about to make it exactly what you want. It doesn't have to be perfect the day you buy it, just like the truck doesn't have to be perfect the day you buy it. It's just about being able to be what you want in the end within your means.
Yeah, exactly. And then probably the last part I have on trailers, I know it varies state to state, but I know some trailers, like I know in Virginia, they don't weigh. When you get pulled over by DOT, you don't get weighed anymore. They base off of what your truck can haul and what the trailer can haul, and then they're like, hey, you need a CDL. Do you have that much weight on the trailer? No. You have a race truck that doesn't weigh that much. You got some tools, and that's it. Just be cautious of, your state and how the laws work. You might want to get the slightly smaller trailer that can still haul the weight that you need it to, just so you can fall under DOT stuff. I know, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much all the way around, but I think it's like, 45 foot or 44 foot you have to have a CDL for?
Yeah, I'm not positive of it, and I should be because I have a CDL, but that's a good point. I mean, if you don't want to play with the CDL game, you just buy a non-CDL trailer and then never worry about it.
Yeah, it's just something to, look up, figure out, because it can save you a lot of headache in the end. Yeah, are you going to get messed with just having a race truck on it? More than likely now, but I've been victim to, I had a empty trailer on the back of a 450. I got pulled over. DOT guy comes up to me, says, here's a ticket, you need a CDL, because at the time I didn't have CDL, and the truck and the trailer said I can haul this amount of weight. And I had nothing to fight against. I mean, that's the way to do it. So
yep.
It's just something to kind of look out for and do your research on. I mean, a lot of this stuff just goes back to research.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a broken record at this point, but the amount of information that's at your fingertips between different resources, and I mean, pretty much everybody's got a smartphone, or if not, you probably at least got access to a computer, I hope. I mean, they're listening to a podcast, I like to believe so. Just a little bit of research can save you so much time, so much headache, and honestly, so much money. Just it pays to do a little bit of homework before putting yourself in a bad situation.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you can literally spend 30 minutes to an hour looking up the stuff, and yeah, not every bit of information you get is perfect to the T, but you can normally get a good relative answer of what you need to know in, 30 minutes to an hour of your time.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. In the time it's going to take somebody to listen to this podcast, you could be armed with quite a bit of knowledge about the things you want to go buy. And I mean, like I said, if you can't find the answer, reach out. I mean, I know I don't want to really go into this, but I know the Facebook forums can be problematic. But, I mean, there's still good info on them, and you can find good people willing to help you in different places that don't want to see you learn the lessons the same hard way they did. I mean, a lot of us that have been doing this, I mean, we didn't wake up yesterday and decide to have 2 trucks, a trailer, and go racing. It took time. It took effort. We messed up along the way, and at least everybody I know is willing to help you avoid the same costly mistakes we already did.
Yeah. I mean, especially like pretty much, I would put everybody on this that's been on this podcast. If you have questions, anything, reach out to them. I mean, I know you'll be more than happy to answer. I'll be more than happy to answer. If I don't know the answer to it, I'll either find out the answer or I'll point you in the direction of a person or a contact or something that will know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, competition drives everything. And, I mean, to the guys not willing to help, I mean, to hell with you guys. But for everybody else, I mean, most people don't have problems sharing things. I mean, yes, I know there's exceptions. Like, you're probably not going to go ask a pro puller what his exact air, fuel, and timing setup is, etc. Yeah, they're probably not going to tell you. But, if you were to ask them, like, hey, man, I'm trying to get into pulling. Where should I start? Who should I talk to? Or I'm trying to get into racing especially. There's going to be guys that are willing to help you, because without new guys coming into these sports, they go away. I mean, without guys getting into diesel would go away. I mean, most people understand that and aren't afraid to help someone, a little more green to this, get into it. Everybody's got to learn from somewhere. You don't just know this stuff out of nowhere. You got to learn it from somebody. And usually that same somebody's willing to teach the next guy just as well.
Yeah. And you never really stop learning. Like, you just always,
No.
You may have known each other for 5-6 years now, and the stuff that we were coming up with back then compared to the stuff that we're coming up with now is way different. We've just continued to learn and just advance ourselves in the diesel industry and the race industry. And I mean, look, 10 years ago in the diesel industry, they were making 1,800 horsepower and were excited and trying to use torque to go fast. And now we figured out you need to use horsepower to go fast. You brake a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's learning all the time. And I mean, quite honestly, anyone who says they're not just lying. I mean, if you're not learning, you're not trying. Just like if you're not breaking stuff, you're not trying. That's just how it goes sometimes. And I mean, I guess to relate it back to the whole used parts thing, if you have a budget in mind and you know what it is, don't focus on, I have to have, Menser shocks because the really fast guys are running them. Man, there's a lot of guys in a lot of really competitive classes running way more basic setups than anybody gives them credit for. I mean, I've seen guys go wicked fast on Bilstein shocks, just off the shelf normal shocks. So I mean, don't buy into the you got to spend all the money, and that comes back to just asking people. There's things that matter, there's things that don't, and there's things that you might not even know about that'll matter more than anything you're worried about, and you'll never know unless you learn the hard way or you ask.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, realistically, you and me, up until this year, we were still running Bilstein shocks.
Yeah.
not saying our trucks were wicked fast or anything, but we were competitive in what we were doing, and there was parts that we cheaped out on. There's still, you don't have to get the highest brand to be competitive. You and me are both not running super name brand turbos, and
nope.
We are putting them through their paces, and they are holding up, and I know a bunch of people putting them through their paces, and they're holding up. I have zero complaints about VS Racing turbos. They've been great so far.
Yeah, that's one of those things where, would it be cool for the trucks to be running all of, like, Johnny's stainless diesel turbos? Yeah, it'd be sick. But right now, we can save a whole bunch of money running some cheaper turbos for the time being. And if it works, it ain't stupid, right? It's that simple. Save the little bit of money you didn't spend on that turbo now. You can put towards things that are going to help a whole bunch more, like a good set of tires, or good tuning if it's a common rail truck, or, a good pump if it's a VP or a P-pump truck. There's a lot of things you can do to manipulate the money you have to kind of accomplish more than you'd ever expect.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And also with turbos, it's a big thing of, when you do a new setup, you don't know how the truck's going to react to it. So spending less on a turbo to get a good idea how the truck's going to like that size turbo, then you can go out and run that turbo for a while, and you can save up and get the nicer turbo, but you already know, hey, the truck likes a 475. Awesome. Where, you go out and buy a stainless diesel or a Garrett turbo or any of the big names, and you get it and you put it on the truck, and the truck does not like it at all, you're out that money at that point because you have to reevaluate everything you're doing, or you have to build a truck around the turbo. Where you go out and buy a cheaper turbo, the size and wise that you want, say, hey, it likes this, or hey, it doesn't like this. You're out a lot less money. You can go get another one. You can probably buy almost two turbos for the price of one of the really nice turbos, and figure out the size that you like, and then save up and get the turbo that you actually want.
Yeah, I guess to clarify, we're not saying, like, the better turbos aren't worth it. Like, the GT55s and Johnny's 5-blade turbos, and there's so many more I won't even bother getting into, are definitely nicer units. There's no two ways about it. The Garrett I have sitting here beside me is so much nicer than the VS sitting out on that truck. But it comes down to, if you're just getting into it, the cheaper turbo is a great option to start with. And, let's be honest, at some point you're going to replace it anyways. You're going to go bigger, or you're going to eventually need a new turbo at some point, no matter what. So it's more cost effective on the areas where it's, I guess if you will, safe to go a little cheaper. Whereas things like, I wouldn't agree with trying to go cheaper on is like injectors. Don't buy injectors direct off of eBay or some shit. Get them from someone you know is real, like FDI or Exergy or SNS, or take your pick. There's so many. But try to spend the money where it matters, and maybe save a little where you can for the time being. Like, every truck doesn't need slicks. I'm sorry to break anyone's heart, but if you're going out and running E-Teen 770, you don't need to spend money on slicks. Just run some good street tires. I mean, hell, there's trucks in 670 that don't run slicks. So, I mean, there's that too. But you don't need to spend all the money on a different set of wheels and a different set of tires if you don't need it right away. Just run a decent set of wheels and some street tires for the time being. Or if you're pulling, you don't need real wheels right from the gate. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars and have, some crazy cut tires right from the word go to start getting into it. I think one of the biggest problems in this industry is the guys look at the big name trucks and they think if their truck isn't just like that, they're not going to be competitive. Well, that's not real. That's the top, 1-2% of vehicles in competition. Whereas, I'll use our buddy Jesse's Duramax. It just runs 420s. It is on, I think, Moto Metals maybe. Nothing crazy on the suspension. And that truck it's a killer in like 770. It does amazing. It can run a little faster if it wants to. But it can drive itself to and from the track. He doesn't have to tow it every time. Whereas, our race trucks, we got to tow them on one set of tires and bolt the slicks on and race it on the slicks and then switch tires back and da-da-da-da-da. And, yeah, it's cool because the trucks are faster and, they do what they do. But that's not how you start. I mean, hell, that's not how our truck started. We didn't make our first passes ever on full slicks and lightweight wheels with little brakes and yada, yada, roll cage, all that. Our trucks were street driven. We showed up in them. We had power windows and power seats, and we took them to get dinner that night. You don't have to start with something crazy. So if you're looking at used parts and you're like, man, I got to buy slicks, you probably don't right away, and you can probably use that money to get that used turbo that's a little nicer. Look at things that matter more than just what it looks like it has to have the look of the big name trucks.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You don't have to have the biggest budget to be competitive.
No, I mean,
know folks out there that are really, they got less money in their trucks than I have in my truck, and they're competitive, and you kind of got to put the money where it needs it, and then a lot of those guys, they put money in something, and then they go until they find the next limit. Then they put the money in that. Go till you find the next limit. Put the money in that.
Yeah, this isn't, we're not talking about show trucks. Just because you spent more money than the guy beside you doesn't mean you'll be faster. The guy on a budget who bought almost all of his parts used because he paid attention might very well walk away from you because he did it better than you. It's just what it comes down to.
Yeah. And every truck's different. Everything is, there's no recipe that you can say, put this on, and you can have two identical trucks, and you can put all that stuff on each of those trucks. They're going to be a touch different. They're not going to be exactly the same.
Yep.
You can take my setup and put on your truck, and you put your setup in my truck. They're going to be a touch different.
Man, I'll tell you, we race with so many people that, don't have extravagant budgets. They're the kind of guys that are going to be listening to this podcast. They're Facebook shopping like we do, trying to find parts on a deal. And man, don't look at it like, you can't be as fast because you didn't spend as much. Because man, that stuff ain't true. There's guys that have $5,000 trucks. They put $5,000 in and towed it in on a $3,000 trailer that'll walk away from some, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 quote unquote built trucks because it works better, because they push it harder, because, their setup makes sense. It's not just all about having the quote unquote right brands. So don't don't be scared to use the budget you have to have the fun you want to have. There's a reason there's so many classes in pulling and so many classes in drag racing, and what we didn't even talk about, like dyno competitions. You know, even dyno competitions have classes aimed at guys that don't have $60,000 engines. You know, you can compete in anything you want with almost any budget as long as you put a little bit of thought behind it.
Yeah. All very good points. Well, I think that pretty much goes down our list. I know we got on a bunch of rabbit holes there. We got some good information out there, and I had a good time doing it.
Yeah, man. I mean, if this helps one person, it works. It completely works for me. I mean, it was a lot of fun to talk about it, and I mean, if anybody needs anything, just please reach out to one of us. I mean, we're more than happy to help.
Yes, definitely. Reach out to Damon, reach out to me. We can either point you in the right direction or answer it ourselves, or more than likely, at some point, we've been in this situation ourselves. So,
yeah,
you know where to find us, so just try to reach out if you have questions, and that's all I can really say.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun, man. It was a good one, and I'm sure talk to you again soon.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate having you on, and I'm sure we'll be doing it again soon.
Absolutely.
You've been the most comeback guy so far. So, all right, man. Well, you have a good one.
You too, man. See ya.
And that puts an end to the newest episode of the Blue Collar Racing Podcast.